Darius Bellamy had been staring at the same page for over an hour. The words meant nothing. His mind kept drifting next door to the dark windows, the empty driveway, the woman who still hadn't come home from her blind date. Then the knocking came. 3 sharp pounds against wood, then 3 more. He opened the door. Celine Hartley stood on his porch in a silk dress that cost more than his truck. Eyes, red lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. She looked at him and said, "I choose you." Before he could speak, the story spilled out: the failed date, the arrogant man, the words that had cut her down, not gentle enough. Darius almost laughed, but Celine didn't. She went still, looked him straight in the eyes, and asked the question he had never been prepared for. "Do you think the same thing? After all this time, why won't you propose to me?" If you've ever been told you were too much, too strong, too independent, too difficult to love, stay with this story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. Stories like this one are why this channel exists. Celine Hartley did not do soft. That was what people said about her in boardrooms, in business profiles, in the careful whispers of people who admired her from a distance and feared her up close. She had built her company from a 2-person operation in a rented office space into a firm with 300 employees and contracts that stretched across 4 states. She had sat across from men twice her age who thought she would fold under pressure, and she had not folded. Not once. She wore that reputation like armor, and for a long time she had been grateful for it. What people didn't see, what she allowed almost no one to see, was the version of Celine that existed after the meetings ended, and the car door closed and the house went quiet. The version that stood in her kitchen at 10 o'clock at night, still in her work clothes, eating leftovers over the sink, because sitting at the dining table alone felt like too much of a reminder. The version that had every reason to feel proud of herself, and still sometimes felt like she was missing something she didn't know how to name. She knew what it was, she just refused to say it out loud. His name was Darius Bellamy, and he lived next door. Darius had come back from the Navy 3 years ago with a daughter, a duffel bag, and the particular quietness of a man who had seen enough to stop filling silence with words. He was broad-shouldered and unhurried, the kind of man who fixed things without being asked. A loose fence post, a flickering porch light, a car engine that had given up on a Tuesday morning when Celine was already 20 minutes late to a meeting. He had appeared with a toolbox before she finished her first call for roadside assistance, and he had gotten her car running without making her feel like she owed him anything. That was the thing about Darius. He never made her feel like she owed him. His daughter Leora was 7 years old and missing her 2 front teeth, and absolutely convinced that Celine was the most interesting person on the block. She knocked on Celine's door on Saturday mornings to show her drawings. She asked questions that had no polite answer and then waited seriously for a response. She had her father's steadiness and her own particular brand of chaos, and Celine, who had spent most of her adult life believing she was not a children person, had somehow become completely devoted to this one small human. Leora's mother had died when Leora was 4. Darius never talked about it directly, but Celine had pieced it together over time. A car accident 2 years into his last deployment while he was overseas and couldn't get home fast enough. He carried it the way veterans carried things, not visibly, but in the set of his jaw sometimes, in the way he watched his daughter sleep when he thought no one was looking. The neighborhood had decided long ago that Darius and Celine were in love. The older woman across the street mentioned it at least once a month. The couple 2 houses down had apparently made a bet about when it would happen. Even the mail carrier had opinions. Celine and Darius pretended not to notice, but the evidence was there, quiet and persistent, like water finding its way through stone. He knew how she took her coffee. She knew which nights Leora had bad dreams. He had shown up at her office once unannounced with lunch because she had mentioned in passing that morning that she had back-to-back meetings until 7 and probably wouldn't eat. She had stood in the lobby and looked at the paper bag in his hands and not known what to do with the feeling in her chest. He had looked at her in a way that made her feel seen. Then he had handed her the bag and said, "Don't skip dinner either," and left. That was as close as it ever got. By March, Celine had been waiting for something she couldn't even fully articulate, A word, a moment, a single clear signal that what she felt between them was real and mutual and worth the risk of saying out loud. Darius never gave her one. He was warm and consistent and present in every way that mattered, and he never crossed the invisible line between them. Every time the distance closed, every time they ended up on the same porch after Leora was in bed, talking until midnight about nothing important, every time his hand stayed a second too long near hers, he found a quiet way to step back. She told herself she was misreading it. She told herself she was projecting. She was a woman who ran a company. She knew how to read a room, and maybe she was simply wrong about this one. When her college friend mentioned Conrad Vale, wealthy, well-connected, recently divorced, reportedly charming, Celine said yes before she finished thinking it through. Not because she wanted to go, because she needed to prove to herself that she could. That she was not the kind of woman who waited on a porch for a man who had decided for whatever reason that she wasn't worth stepping toward. She dressed carefully. She told herself it was just dinner. Conrad Vale was charming for exactly 45 minutes. He had the right restaurant, the right table, the right suit. He asked questions and listened to the answers and refilled her wine glass without being asked. Celine thought, this is fine. This is good. This is what normal looks like. Then he started talking about what he wanted in a partner. It came out gradually the way these things usually did. He used careful words at first, balance, complementary, the right dynamic. But the careful words gave way to the real ones. He wanted someone who knew when to be quiet. Someone who didn't need to win every conversation. Someone who understood that a strong man needed a woman who could step back and let him lead. Women like you, he said, swirling his glass, are impressive. Genuinely. But impressive isn't the same as easy to love. Celine set down her fork. Men want to feel needed, Conrad continued as if she had invited him to go on. A woman who handles everything herself, who doesn't need anything from anyone, she's admirable, sure. But she's not soft enough to be a wife. You don't know how to let a man take care of you. That's not an insult. It's just an observation. He said it the way men said things when they believed they were doing you a favor by being honest. Celine looked at him across the table, the expensive suit, the easy confidence, the complete absence of awareness that he had just said something unforgivable, and she felt something shift inside her. Not anger exactly, something colder, a kind of clarity. She had been afraid for months that there was something wrong with her, that she was too much, too hard, too difficult to love. That Darius kept his distance because he saw something in her that wasn't worth getting close to. Sitting across from Conrad Vale, she realized that wasn't the fear she needed to be dealing with. The fear she needed to deal with was simpler, and it was waiting for her back on Whitmore Street, in a house with the lights still on. She paid her half of the check. She stood up, said goodnight without elaborating, and walked out. The drive home took 20 minutes. Celine spent most of it with both hands on the wheel and her mind completely still, the way it got when she had just made a decision and her body hadn't caught up yet. She pulled onto Whitmore Street and saw exactly what she expected. Her house dark and perfect and empty. His house lit from within the way it always was when he was up late reading, or sitting at the kitchen table going over Leora's school papers, or just existing in the particular quiet way that Darius existed. She sat in her car for a minute, maybe two. Then she got out, crossed the small stretch of grass between their driveways, and knocked on his door. 3 times. Then 3 more. When he opened it, he was in a worn navy t-shirt and sweatpants, and he looked at her the way he always looked at her, like she was the most complicated problem he had ever encountered, and he wasn't in any hurry to solve it. "I choose you," she said. Darius blinked. "Celine, the date was a disaster," she said. "The man told me I wasn't gentle enough to be a wife, that I was too independent, too strong, that I didn't know how to let a man take care of me." She watched his face. He said impressive women aren't easy to love. Darius stared at her for a moment. Then, despite himself, something broke in his expression. Not cruelty, nothing like that, just the sheer absurdity of it, and he almost laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. He caught it quickly, but not quickly enough. Celine felt the sound land somewhere behind her sternum. She had come here because she was finally ready, because she had sat across from a man who wanted to reduce her, and it had made her realize with complete certainty who she actually wanted to be standing in front of. She had come here brave, and he had almost laughed. She didn't cry. Celine Hartley did not cry on other people's porches, but something in her went very quiet, the same quietness she got right before a difficult boardroom moment, when everything inside her pulled tight and clear. She looked at him, straight on. "Do you think the same thing?" she asked. Her voice was steady. "After all this time, after everything, do you think I'm not gentle enough? Is that why—" She paused. "Why won't you propose to me, Darius?" The question landed between them like something dropped from a height. Darius stopped. Whatever he had been about to say dissolved. He looked at her, really looked at her the way he sometimes did when he thought she wasn't paying attention, and the almost laugh was completely gone now. In its place was something that looked to Celine a great deal like the truth. He hadn't answered, but the question was out, and neither of them could take it back. Darius did not answer her that night. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, and Celine watched something move across his face. Not dismissal, not indifference, but something harder to name. Something that looked like a man standing at the edge of something he had been avoiding for a very long time. "Come inside," he said finally. "It's cold." She followed him into the kitchen. He poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of her, and stood on the other side of the counter with his hands wrapped around his own glass. The house was quiet. Leora was asleep. The only sound was the refrigerator hum and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. "You want to know why I haven't said anything?" Darius said. It wasn't a question. "I want to know why you keep stepping back," Celine said. "Every time, every single time." He was quiet for a moment. Not the avoidant kind of quiet, the kind where a man was deciding how honest to be. "It's not because of anything you're lacking," he said. "It's not because you're too strong or too much or anything that man said to you tonight." He set his glass down. "I haven't moved forward because I'm afraid." Celine waited. "You are a CEO," he said. "You run a company. You have a life that looks exactly like what you built it to be. And I am a veteran with a mortgage I'm still catching up on, a daughter who has nightmares twice a week, and a history that isn't simple." He met her eyes. "I kept thinking one day she's going to look up and realize she deserves someone without all of this. And I didn't want to be the person standing there when that happened." Celine stared at him. "I didn't say anything," he continued, "because I didn't want to ask you to choose a life that might not be enough for you. Not because I don't—" He stopped, reset. "Not because the feeling isn't there." The kitchen was very still. Celine understood in that moment what had been happening between them for the better part of 2 years. She had been afraid of being rejected. He had been afraid of not being worthy. 2 people who cared about each other, both standing on opposite sides of the same door, both convinced the other one had a reason not to open it. "You've been protecting me," she said, "from something I never asked to be protected from." "I know," he said. "That's not your decision to make. I know that too." They stood there in the quiet kitchen, not quite touching, not quite saying the rest of it. There was more, there was so much more, but the night had already asked enough of both of them. Celine finished her water. Darius walked her to his front door. She crossed back to her own house in the dark, and neither of them said goodnight. But something had shifted. They both felt it. The question was what they were going to do with it. The days after that night had a different texture. Celine and Darius didn't talk about the kitchen conversation directly, but the careful distance they had maintained for 2 years, the unspoken agreement to stay on the comfortable side of something undefined, had quietly collapsed. They couldn't go back to pretending, so they moved forward in small, uncertain increments, neither one fully committing to what they both understood was already true. Leora noticed immediately. She noticed the way children noticed things adults tried to hide, not by understanding the details, but by reading the atmosphere. She could tell her father was distracted in a new way. Not the heavy distraction of his hard days when he went quiet and stayed in the garage too long. This was different. He smiled at his phone. He stood at the window sometimes. One morning, while Darius was making her breakfast, Leora sat on the kitchen counter the way she wasn't supposed to and watched him with her head tilted. "Dad," she said. You love Miss Celine, don't you?" Darius turned from the stove. He looked at his daughter, her serious eyes, her two missing teeth, the way she asked impossible questions with the same expression other people used for simple ones. He opened his mouth, closed it. "Make the eggs," Leora said, and went back to her drawing. 2 days later, Leora found her own way to the source. She knocked on Celine's door after school with a worksheet about fractions she claimed she didn't understand, which Celine was fairly certain she understood fine. They sat at Celine's kitchen table and worked through it, and when it was done, Leora put down her pencil and looked up. "If you love my dad," she said with the same matter-of-fact directness she had gotten from him, "how come you don't come for dinner every night?" Celine looked at the small face across the table, at the dark eyes that missed nothing and forgave everything. "That's a complicated question," Celine said. "It doesn't seem complicated," Leora said. "He makes good food. You always say so." Celine smiled. But the smile stayed with her long after Leora went home, and it carried weight she hadn't expected. She had been thinking about this as something between her and Darius, two adults navigating their own fears, their own timing. She had not fully let herself think about what it meant for Leora, about the fact that this little girl had already lost one woman who was supposed to stay, about what it would mean to step into that space, and what it would mean to walk away from it. She wasn't walking away, she knew that. But she understood sitting alone in her kitchen after Leora left that the stakes of this were not small. Conrad Vale did not take rejection quietly. Within a week of their dinner, the story had changed. Celine heard it third-hand from a colleague who had heard it at a fundraiser that Celine Hartley had shown up to, a date clearly distracted, had left abruptly, and had apparently gone directly to the home of a neighbor, a black ex-military man she had apparently become emotionally dependent on in what one account described as a breakdown. Conrad had not used the word breakdown. He was too careful for that. He had simply told the story in a way that allowed other people to reach that conclusion on their own. The version that circulated through the city's upper social tier was that Celine, under personal stress, had made an impulsive and somewhat embarrassing declaration to a man who was, as one acquaintance put it, not exactly in her circle. The implication was clear without being stated. She was losing her footing. She was becoming someone who made decisions with her emotions instead of her judgment. Celine found out on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, she had received 2 texts from professional acquaintances asking if she was doing okay, which was the polite way of saying they had heard the story and wanted to see how she would respond to it. She didn't respond to any of them. But that evening, the chair of her board of directors called. His name was Ronald Ashby, and he had been on her board since the company's 2nd year. He was not unkind. He was also not someone who separated personal reputation from professional liability. "I'm not saying the rumors are true," he said over the phone, his tone careful and measured. "I'm saying they exist, and they're being heard by people whose confidence in the company is tied in part to confidence in you." "My personal life has no impact on the company's performance," Celine said. "I agree with you," Ashby said. "But perception matters in this industry. You know that." A pause. "There are members of the board who are concerned. Conrad Vale has relationships with 2 of our largest potential investors. If he's actively..." "He's a man I had one dinner with and declined to see again," Celine said. "He's circulating a distorted version of events because his ego is bruised. I'd hope the board could distinguish between a business concern and a spurned acquaintance causing noise." "So would I," Ashby said. "That's why I'm calling you before this becomes a formal discussion." After she hung up, Celine sat at her desk for a long time without moving. 3 days later, Conrad himself reappeared. He texted first, casual, measured as if the dinner had never happened. Then he called. When she didn't answer, he showed up at a fundraiser she was attending and found her near the bar with the practiced ease of a man who believed his presence was always welcome. "I want to apologize," he said, swirling his drink. "I was too direct the other night. I said things I shouldn't have." He paused, letting the apology land. Then, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'm willing to start over if you are. I can be understanding about what happened after the neighbor situation. People do impulsive things. It doesn't have to define anything.
Celine looked at him.
The gracious expression, the careful positioning, the word understanding offered like a gift, as if she needed his forgiveness for a choice she hadn't made wrong. I appreciate the gesture, she said, but there's nothing to start over from. Have a good evening, Conrad. She walked away and did not look back. The following week, her mother called from Atlanta. Her mother, Gloria Hartley, was a gracious and intelligent woman who expressed love primarily through gentle redirection. The call lasted 40 minutes. The words Conrad Vale were never used, but everything else was the importance of choosing a partner who understood her world, the complications of blended families, the way a man with a difficult past could, however unintentionally, introduce complications into a woman's carefully built life. She said it all warmly. She said it all because she believed she was helping. Celine listened without arguing. She said she understood. She hung up and poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her kitchen window looking at the lit windows next door. She was tired. She was tired of people deciding on her behalf what she was capable of handling. Then Darius started pulling back. It was subtle at first. He stopped coming over in the evenings. When Leora asked to go to Celine's on Saturday, he told her Celine was probably busy. He repaired a section of the fence between their properties without telling her, which was something he would normally have mentioned. The small daily thread of contact that had existed between them, a wave, a word, a cup of coffee shared on the porch, went quiet. Celine waited 3 days. Then she went to him. She found him in his garage doing the methodical work of cleaning and organizing that she had learned was what he did when something was bothering him. He looked up when she came in. He didn't seem surprised. "You heard," she said. "I heard," he said. "And your solution is to disappear." He set down the socket wrench in his hand. "My solution is to stop making your life harder than it needs to be." "I didn't ask you to make it easier," she said. "I asked you to be honest with me. You were honest with me, and now you're retreating because someone started talking." "It's not just talking," he said. "It's your board. It's your reputation. It's things I have no business disrupting." "You're not disrupting anything," she said. "Conrad is disrupting things. The board is reacting. You are the only person in this situation who is actually behaving well, and you're the one acting like you did something wrong." Darius was quiet. "Are you protecting me?" she said. "Or are you leaving before I get the chance to choose you again?" He didn't answer. But she saw it. The thing he didn't say moved through his face. She left without pushing further. She had said what needed to be said. The rest of it was his. The board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday. 3 days before it, Celine received a formal written notice. It outlined the board's concerns in careful, neutral language. Recent media attention, investor relations, the importance of stable leadership optics. At the bottom, the implication was made explicit. The board was prepared to call a vote on her continued position as CEO if she did not take steps to address the perception issues surrounding her personal life. They did not name Darius. They didn't need to. Celine read the letter twice. Then she set it on her desk and looked out her office window at the city below and thought very clearly, no. But before she could do anything with that clarity, she looked out her front window that evening and saw the moving boxes. She had not known. He had not told her. She crossed the lawn before she had time to talk herself out of it. The front door was open. Inside, Darius was sealing a box near the hallway. Leora was sitting on the stairs with her old stuffed bear, the one she'd had since she was 3, watching her father work, with the careful stillness of a child who understood more than she was supposed to. Celine stood in the doorway. Darius looked up. He had known she would come. He straightened slowly. "There's a position," he said. "Training program for veterans in transition about 2 hours north. I've been considering it for a while." "You've been considering it since Wednesday?" she said. He didn't deny it. "It's a good opportunity. Good for Leora to have a change of scenery." "Darius, Celine." His voice was quiet, even, the voice he used when he had already made up his mind. The night you came to my door, you said you chose me. And I know you meant it. But that was one moment, one hard night. I can't let one moment cost you everything you've built. Celine felt the words hit her somewhere deep. That wasn't one moment, she said. That was 2 years. That was every morning and every evening and every dinner and every time Leora dragged me into your kitchen because she wanted company. That was the whole time, Darius. Not one night. He looked at her, and she could see it. She could see that he knew she was right. But she could also see the fear, the particular brand of fear that lived in a man who had already lost something irreplaceable and had spent 3 years making sure it would never happen again. If I stay, he said quietly, and this goes the way I want it to, the way I've wanted it to for a long time, and then something goes wrong. He stopped, looked toward the stairs where Leora sat pretending not to listen. She's already lost her mother. I won't put her through losing someone else. I'm not leaving, Celine said. You don't know that. Neither do you. They stood there, and the space between them felt enormous, not because the distance was great, but because of everything it contained. 2 years of almost. 2 people who had talked about everything except the one thing that mattered. Leora from the stairs said nothing, but she was watching. Darius looked at the boxes, at the floor, at some point just past Celine's shoulder. The meeting's Thursday, he said. They're going to ask you to make a choice. I've already made my choice, she said. He shook his head slowly. Then let me make mine. Celine stood in his doorway for one more moment. Then she walked back to her house, sat down in her living room, and looked at the empty dining table across the room. Tomorrow she would prepare for Thursday. She would pull her numbers and her projections, and every piece of evidence that proved what she already knew, that she was good at her job, that the company was strong, and that what happened in her personal life was no one's business but her own. But tonight she sat with the weight of it, the boxes in his hallway, the look on Leora's face, the sound of his voice saying, "Let me make mine." And she let herself feel exactly how much was at stake. All of it. Everything. She had never been more certain of what she wanted. She had also never been less certain of getting it. The boardroom on Thursday morning was full before Celine arrived. She had known it would be. She had known the way these things worked, the quiet conversations in hallways, the votes already half decided before the meeting was called to order, the careful theater of a process that had already reached its conclusion. She had been on the other side of it often enough. She understood the choreography. What she had not done in all the years she had spent in rooms like this one was walk in feeling the way she felt now. Not afraid, not defensive, just very, very clear. Conrad Vale was seated near the far end of the table, positioned between 2 board members she recognized as his recent allies. He had been introduced as a prospective strategic partner. He wore the kind of expression that men wore when they believed they had already won. Ronald Ashby opened the meeting with procedural language she let wash past her. She sat at the head of the table where she always sat, and she placed her hands flat on the surface in front of her, and she listened. The concerns came in the expected order. Investor confidence, brand image, leadership stability, the importance of a CEO whose personal life did not generate the kind of attention that distracted from the company's mission. One board member, a man named Douglas Holt, who had voted against her original appointment 7 years ago and had been waiting ever since for a reason to revisit that vote, used the phrase emotional decision-making twice in 4 sentences. Conrad said very little. He didn't need to. He had already said what he needed to say to the right people in the right rooms. His presence at the table was the statement. Then Douglas Holt said, "The concern isn't about capability. We all recognize Celine's capability. The concern is about judgment. A woman in your position running to a neighbor's house after a failed date." "I didn't run," Celine said. The room went quiet. "I drove home," she said. "I parked my car. I walked across my lawn. I knocked on the door of a man I have known and respected for 2 years, and I had an honest conversation with him." She looked at Douglas Holt evenly. "If that's the evidence of a judgment problem, I'd encourage you to reconsider the standard you're applying." "Celine," Ashby began. "I'm not finished," she said. Not loudly, just clearly. She reached into the folder in front of her and began placing documents on the table. Revenue projections, quarterly reports, client retention numbers, partnership agreements signed in the past 6 months. She had prepared for this the same way she prepared for everything, thoroughly, without sentimentality, with the intention of making the facts do the talking. The company's performance in the past fiscal year represents a 31% growth in net revenue, she said. Client retention is at 94%. We closed 3 major partnerships in the past quarter, 2 of which I personally negotiated. Every project is on schedule. Every team is intact. She looked around the table. If someone can show me where the judgment failure is, I'm genuinely asking. Silence. The issue, she continued, is not my performance. The issue is that someone in this room is uncomfortable with the idea that I have a private life that doesn't conform to a particular image. That I might choose a man who doesn't arrive with the right credentials or the right connections. She paused. That is not a business concern, that is a preference, and I will not run my personal life according to someone else's preferences. She looked at Conrad Vale directly. I was told over dinner that I wasn't gentle enough to be a wife. That strong women aren't easy to love. Her voice stayed level. I want to be clear about something. I am not lacking in gentleness. I simply don't offer it to people who confuse gentleness with submission. Conrad held her gaze for exactly 2 seconds before looking away. I am not resigning, she said. I am not issuing a statement about my personal life. I am not going to pretend that the man I care about does not exist in order to make this room more comfortable. She closed the folder in front of her. What I will do is continue to run this company the way I have run it for 7 years, with my full attention, my full commitment, and my full judgment. The same judgment that built everything you're all currently benefiting from. She sat back. The room was very still. Douglas Holt said nothing. Ronald Ashby looked at the table in front of him with an expression she couldn't quite read. 2 of the neutral members were looking at the revenue documents. The vote when it came was 7-4 against removing her. Conrad Vale did not stay for the end of the meeting. She didn't stop to celebrate. She didn't accept the handshakes from the members who had voted with her, didn't pause for the careful congratulations that were already forming in the hallway. She gathered her folder, picked up her bag, and walked to the elevator. In the car, she called no one. She drove. The city moved past her windows. She took the highway north, and then the familiar exit, and then the turns she had made so many times they were muscle memory, and she turned onto Whitmore Street and saw before she had fully stopped the car that Darius's SUV was still in the driveway. He was loading the last of the boxes into the trunk when she pulled up. Leora was on the front steps with her backpack on, watching. When she saw Celine's car, she stood up slowly. She didn't say anything. She just watched. Darius turned at the sound of her door closing. He had a box in his hands. He set it down on the trunk's edge and looked at her across the 20 feet of driveway between them. Celine walked toward him. The vote was 7-4, she said. I'm still CEO. Something moved across his face. Relief, maybe, or guilt. Celine, let me finish, she said. I stood in that room this morning and I told them exactly who I was. I showed them the numbers and I told them the truth, and I told them I wasn't going to reduce myself to make them comfortable. She stopped a few feet in front of him. And then I got in my car and came here because I need you to understand something. He waited. The night I knocked on your door, she said, I wasn't having a breakdown. I wasn't being impulsive. I wasn't running toward you because I had nowhere else to go. She held his gaze. I came to you because after 2 years of watching you choose this neighborhood, choose this house, choose Leora, after 2 years of watching you be exactly the kind of man I didn't know I was waiting for, I finally found enough courage to say what I'd been thinking for a long time. That was not a weak moment. That was the truest thing I've said in years. Darius was very still. What hurts, she said, is not that you haven't proposed. I understand why. I understand the fear. I have the same fear. She paused. What hurts is that you decided without asking me that I couldn't handle your life. That Leora was too much, that your history was too heavy, that you weren't enough. She shook her head. You made that decision for me, and you didn't have the right to do that. He looked at her. She could see the moment the last of his defenses came down, not dramatically, not all at once, but the way a door opened that had been shut too long. Slowly, with the small sound of something giving way. I know, he said. I don't need someone perfect, she said. I need someone honest. I need someone who shows up. I need Leora to have someone in her corner who isn't going anywhere. Her voice was steady, but just barely. I need you to stop deciding what you're worth and let me tell you what I see. Darius set the box down fully. He stood there for a moment with his hands at his sides, looking at the woman in front of him, still in her boardroom clothes, having just fought a room full of people for the right to be exactly who she was, and something in his face finally completely let go. I bought a ring, he said quietly. Celine blinked. 4 months ago, he said, I walked past a jewelry store on a Tuesday and I went in and I bought a ring, and I put it in the drawer next to my bed, and I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. He let out a slow breath. I kept finding reasons why the moment wasn't right. Leora was having a hard week. You had a big deal closing. It wasn't the right place. It wasn't the right time. I wasn't the right person. He shook his head. I had about a dozen excuses, and all of them were just different versions of the same fear. Celine looked at him. I'm afraid, he said. I've been afraid this whole time. Not of you, of what happens if I let myself have this and then it goes wrong. Because I could lose a lot of things and keep going. But I couldn't lose you and be okay. And that scared me more than anything I faced in the Navy. The street was quiet. Somewhere nearby, a sprinkler started. Leora had come down from the steps without either of them noticing and was now standing a few feet away, very still, bare tucked under her arm. Darius reached into his jacket pocket. Celine had not expected that. He lowered himself down onto one knee on the concrete driveway. No restaurant, no stage, no audience, except one small girl with a stuffed bear and the neighbors who had been waiting for this longer than either of them. He opened the small box in his hand. A simple ring, clean and elegant and exactly right. I chose you a long time ago, he said, looking up at her. I just kept finding ways not to say it. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. Will you stop standing on the outside of this family and just stay? Be here. Be ours. Celine pressed her hand over her mouth for exactly 1 second. Then she lowered it. I choose you, she said. Again. Leora made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a cheer, then immediately covered her face with both hands like she hadn't meant to react at all. Darius laughed, a real one, the kind that came from somewhere uncomplicated. And Celine laughed too, and Leora lowered her hands and looked at both of them with an expression of deep, personal vindication. Finally, she said. I've been waiting forever. They didn't go anywhere that evening. There was no restaurant, no celebration, no announcement. Darius carried the last box back inside. Leora put her backpack down and went straight to the kitchen to look for snacks. Celine stood in the hallway of his house and looked at the walls, the family photos, the crayon drawing framed beside the light switch, the scuff on the baseboard she had watched Leora put there with a toy truck last Thanksgiving. And she felt the specific warmth of a place she had always been close to, but never fully inside. She was inside now. Darius cooked. Not anything special pasta, the kind he made on regular Tuesday nights. The kind Celine had eaten at this table a dozen times before. Leora set the table with the focused seriousness she brought to all practical tasks, placing the napkins with precise corners, then reconsidering and adding the good glasses instead of the regular ones, because she explained, it's a special occasion and we should use the nice stuff. They ate at the kitchen table with the overhead light on and the window dark outside, and Leora talked about school and something a classmate had done with a caterpillar, and a theory she had about why Thursdays were statistically harder than Mondays. And Celine listened and responded and argued the Monday case. And Darius watched the two of them from across the table with the expression of a man who had been cold for a long time, and had finally carefully let himself sit near something warm. After dinner, Leora put on music from a small portable speaker she kept on the kitchen shelf. something upbeat and completely unsuitable for the occasion, which made it exactly right. She stood in the middle of the kitchen floor and lifted her arms toward Darius. He took her hands and stepped in the old familiar dance they had, Leora standing on his feet, moving wherever he moved, the dance they had done in this kitchen for years. Then Leora stopped. She looked at Celine sitting at the table. "You too," she said simply, like it was obvious, like it had always been the plan. Celine stood up. Leora grabbed her hand with her free one and pulled her in, rearranging the three of them until she was satisfied, her father's hand in his, Celine's hand in hers, all of them connected in the small kitchen with the pasta pot still on the stove and the good glasses on the table. Celine had spent 2 years watching this house from the outside, watching the lights in the windows, listening for Leora's laugh through the shared wall, telling herself she was happy to be a neighbor, a friend, an occasional dinner guest. She had made herself useful and kept herself at a careful distance and called it being respectful of someone else's space. She had not let herself want it, because wanting it meant risking it. But standing in Darius's kitchen with Leora's small hand pulling her into a dance she hadn't been taught in a house that smelled like pasta and old books and something that simply meant home, she understood that some things couldn't be calculated. Some things you just had to walk toward even when you were afraid, even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed. She had walked toward it, and it had held. Outside Whitmore Street was quiet. The two houses at the end of the block sat side by side the way they always had, but only one of them still had someone standing outside looking in. That part was over. Celine was home. Here's what this story is really about. Celine wasn't lacking in gentleness. She was just waiting for someone safe enough to show it to. Darius wasn't lacking in love. He was just afraid that loving something this good meant having something left to lose. And the truth is, most of us aren't too much. We're just waiting for the right person to make being exactly ourselves feel like enough. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed yet, join us. Every week we bring you stories about real love, real courage, and the quiet moments that change everything.